He has served in a variety of assignments with seminaries and institutes, including seminary teacher, coordinator, country director, and research analyst, as well as assignments with the BYU Religion Department and the church's Correlation Research Information Division. He and his wife, Petra, were married in the China-Hong Kong Temple, and they have 4 children. Felipe's topic is 1970s History of the Church in Taiwan.
Thank you, Brother Bennett. My claim to fame is that my wife and I were the 3rd couple to be sealed in China when the Hong Kong Temple became the China-Hong Kong Temple. I'm really excited to be here today and hope that this presentation will be helpful to your understanding of at least the 1970s history of the church in Taiwan. There you go. Thank you. Just by way of introduction, for you to understand a little bit about the 1970s history, it's important to take at least a couple slides to talk about the pre-1970s political and religious environment in Taiwan. Christianity, of course, was introduced in the 17th century by Catholic and Protestant missionaries, but also in the 1700s, and you have the China Qing dynasty that will conquer Taiwan and thus introduce Buddhism and Taoism, which will then drive out the Christian missionaries, and they don't return to the 19th century. And by the time they return then, the island or the country of Taiwan then is filled with temples, and you can see a picture of one of those Buddhist temple here. Also, in regards to the political environment, in the 20th century, then you have, of course, the end of the Japanese occupation of the island of Formosa or of Taiwan following the end of World War II. But at this time then, it ensues the Chinese Civil War. And in 1949 then, Mao Zedong and the Communist Party will establish the PRC, or the People's Republic of China, in mainland, while Chiang Kai-shek and his National Army, also known as the Kuomintang or the KMT, will then relocate to Taiwan. This civil war, some would say, that's still going on today, and Taiwan will become then what Chiang Kai-shek would call the temporary capital for China while they're away from mainland China. Another interesting development here in the 20th century then is, and this comes from the 19th century, is that the Presbyterian Church will become one of the largest Christian groups in Taiwan, and I'll talk about that a little later. But the Presbyterian Church in Taiwan will become very much involved politically, which will get them into some trouble with the KMT government in Taiwan. In the 50s, of course, we have Elder Kitchen, who will go with a group of missionaries in 56 to introduce the gospel there. In 65, the Chinese Book of Mormon will be translated by Hu Wei. And that leads us up to my presentation today, which begins with the 1970s. The 1970s creation of the Taiwan Mission was a significant event. And to help illustrate that, let me read to you a little bit from, this comes from Bridge from the East, when he talks about the Southern Far East Mission and the distance that they had while the mission was in Hong Kong. I quote from his book, "The church did not take hold in Taiwan quite as quickly as it did in Hong Kong. There were several reasons for this. President Heaton did not assign as many missionaries there as in Hong Kong. He could not visit Taiwan very often. This led to feelings of separateness among many of the Taiwan workers. When Heaton or his counselors visited Taiwan, the missionaries, and he's referring to local missionaries, treated them coolly, and when the leaders were gone, the Taiwan elders disregarded some mission rules and direction. But during the last part of 1958, President Heaton assigned his counselor, Brent Hardy, to live in Taiwan. From then on, the work progressed at a faster pace." So suggesting to us that having a mission established in Taiwan and also have a mission president that was housed in Taiwan made great inroads as far as missionary efforts in Taiwan. You can see from this picture to the far right, Malan Jackson and his wife, who were called to be the first mission president in Taiwan. And that summer, Harold B. Lee, who will be the first member of the first presidency to visit Taiwan, at this time he was the first consul in the first presidency, came for a mission tour, and accompanying him was Elder and Sister Komatsu. Elder Komatsu would be the first general authority of Asian descent. Now the church is very much interested on what's going on, and the church also, some of you may be aware that the church security department reveals what's going on worldwide. Just this week I saw on the news that the church pulled out missionaries out of Ukraine because of the situation there. And the church monitors and watches over what's going on worldwide politically. And so as part of my presentation, I will help you put into context what was going on as far as missionary work in the context of the political situation that was going on. In 1971, for example, the United Nations changed China's seat from the ROC, the Republic of China, or the Taiwanese government, to mainland China, the PRC. The U.S. continued to recognize the Taiwan government as the rightful government for the Chinese people, but the UN did not. And within 2 weeks, Elder Marvin J. Ashton was sent to Taiwan to visit and to teach and to encourage the saints. Elder Ashton was at that time assistant to the 12. A month after he returns, he will become a member of the 12 after the death of Elder Richard L. Evans. But you can see here in this picture, there's a picture of a protest. There are protests in New York in front of the United Nations. There's also protests in Taiwan when the UN changed the seat from the ROC to the PRC. Also in 71 then, Nixon will make an announcement that he would visit China, and by February 1972, Nixon would visit the PRC to normalize relations. You can see a picture here of Chairman Mao, who is over the PRC in mainland China, and President Nixon here. While this was going on across the Straits of Taiwan then, you have the Taiwan mission continuing to grow and flourish. Now, time won't allow me to tell you much about some of the projects that were going on, but for instance, in 1971, when the church established the health missionary program, then you have, by 1972, the first health missionary, Igra Gielbogil from Finland, who will be the first health missionary to Taiwan. Also in 1972, Neil A. Maxwell, who was then Commissioner of Church Education, would organize the AERP, or the Asia Educational Resource Project. He will send a group to visit various countries in Asia and make recommendations regarding the educational needs in that area. Following that report, then by 1973, the church educational system will establish its first office in Taiwan. Alan and Michelle, you can see their picture there on picture here on the left, will be the first ones to be sent to establish the church educational system in Taiwan. They would arrive in July of 1973. Institute programs will begin, and Alan would travel throughout the island to establish institute classes. He would also, before they would return to the U.S. in '74, he would hire Joseph Wong, which is pictured here to the right, with his soon-to-be wife, and then they would take over the program in Taipei. Brother Lee then would be hired in Kaohsiung, and later on, when Joseph Wang is transferred to oversee the programs in Hong Kong, then Wan Liu Pao would take over in '78. And by the late 1970s, though, there will be 350 seminary students and over 400 institute students in Taiwan. And so the missionaries work hand in hand with the CES programs in Taiwan. Alan recounts a story where he traveled throughout the southern part of Taiwan with Malan Jackson, the mission president, to help encourage the members to enroll their children in the seminary and institute classes. Now, in 74 would be a very important change to the mission and the missionary work and the growth of the church in Taiwan. Thomas P. Nielsen will arrive as the new mission president to replace Jackson. And during Nielsen's time, there will be significant changes that will affect the work in Taiwan, both during the 70s and beyond. The Taiwan mission was renamed the Taiwan Taipei Mission. Nielsen made some adjustments to the missionary lessons. By this time, the church had organized the 6 missionary lessons. Nielsen understood the culture and he understood the environment he was working in, understanding that the Chinese did not have a background in regards to who Jesus Christ was or what the Bible was, who Moses, Abraham, and other Judeo-Christian prophets were. He understood, however, that the Chinese were very much focused on families, on genealogy, on worshiping their ancestors. And Nielsen then will produce a series of film strips. The first one is We Are Waiting, to teach the Chinese about the importance of the ancestors that they honor and their need for temple work. As a result, missionary work will increase and convert baptism will increase during this time. It's also during this time where Nielsen, who had previously worked with the translation of the scriptures into Chinese, and you can see here on the top right, the Book of Mormon translated into Chinese. This was in 65, but then you will have the Doctrine and Covenants and the Pearl Grey Prize that will come in 75 and 76. And so 20 years after the first missionaries arrived in Taiwan, we have now all the other scriptures available. And this will be significant in helping moving the work forward. In 75, then, Chiang Kai-shek, who's the president of the Republic of China, will pass away, bringing some instability. There was concern about the political situation then, and within a few weeks, then President Kimball announces that he's going to tour and visit Taiwan and preside over the first area conference in Taiwan. He would arrive in August. But between May and August, Nielsen tells us that the Chinese members then took a great part in preparing for, in inviting, in developing public relations. And by the time President Kimball arrives in August then, he will also have the opportunity to visit with the interim president for Taiwan. He will attend and hold the first area conference. And the members were really excited because this would be the first time they would get to hear in person the president of the church, a prophet of God. The meeting was attended by about 2,500 people. One missionary says that President Kimball, when he arrived, he was greeted by a friendly mob. And it's not just the 2,500 people who heard him speak. This conference will also be broadcasted on national TV and the radio, and other Taiwanese people were able to hear a prophet of God speak in Taiwan for the first time. Following that great conference, then Nielsen would recommend to the first presidency the establishment of the first stake in the Chinese realm. And by April then, or actually in January of 76, Nielsen will receive a letter to let him know that the first stake in Taiwan would be organized. 2 weeks after that, Nielsen receives a letter from the first presidency indicating that in addition, they would also split the mission and create the second mission in Taiwan. So there's great excitement when Elder Gordon B. Hinckley, who at this time then was a member of the Quorum of the 12, came with Elder Komatsu, and on April 22nd, 1976, the first stake was organized in the Chinese realm, and the Taiwan stake with 4,500 members. And in here, then you will have, you'll see a picture to the bottom right of Zhang Yiqing, who became then the first Chinese stake president. And will do great things to bless the saints during this period. You will have Boyd Hales who arrive for the newly created Taiwan Kaohsiung Mission in the south. Also in this year, Mao Zedong, Chairman Mao from the People's Republic of China will pass away, and then by 77, then Crook would come to replace Nielsen. By the time Crook comes, the membership in Taiwan would have surpassed Hong Kong, which of course is a change from what it was before. At the end of 78, Jimmy Carter, the President of the United States, would send a delegation to Taiwan and work out arrangements to transfer diplomatic relations between the U.S. and the ROC to the PRC. This was a great blow to many of the Taiwanese. Even though the UN had walked away from them, they had for many years the United States government who supported them financially, supported them with a military base there, but this was quite a big concern for them. And so there was a great animosity towards American missionaries, which slowed down missionary work for a few months. When the U.S. Embassy, the delegation sent by Jimmy Carter came at the end of 78 and early 79, rather than having a friendly mob come to them like President Kimball did, they had actually an angry mob that came to protest. But with China's open door policy, it also opened ways for other things to happen. The church was able to send the first group in 1979, the first group of BYU young ambassadors, which did a great work to help normalize relationships and to reduce the tension between the PRC and the ROC during this time. Now, I mentioned a little earlier about the Presbyterian Church in Taiwan, the PCT. Whereas the LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is politically neutral and did not get involved in politics, this was definitely a plus for the church in Taiwan. The Presbyterian Church, which was the major Christian group in Taiwan, were very much involved politically, and they issued 3 public statements that were very critical of the Taiwan government or the KMT government in the 70s. They published one in 71, a follow-up in 75, and then another one in 77. And this put them into a great deal of trouble with the Taiwanese government, because by 1979, the KMT Taiwanese government had by then labeled the Presbyterian Church in Taiwan a terrorist group. This culminated in 1979 with a conflict between them. And you can see here that with the 1979 Kaohsiung Incident, a peaceful demonstration quickly turned into a confrontation with the riot police. The military police was sent forth with tear gas and to disperse the crowd, and there was a bloody confrontation. And as a result, many leaders of the Presbyterian Church in Taiwan were arrested and held for even into the 80s and 90s. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, though, was able to flourish in part because of the development and the growth of the missions, but also because they didn't get involved politically. And you can see here from the Hardy, who presided over the Southern Far East Mission, later divided the Hong Kong-Taiwan Mission. And even as early as 1966, Elder Gordon B. Hinckley had recommended that Taiwan became its separate mission. And then by 71, Malan Jackson came. You can see here from this chart that after Thomas P. Nielsen, the mission was split. And you can see Crook that was in Taipei and Hales that was in Kaohsiung. But then by 79, we had significant growth of the church in Taiwan. And Douglas Powelson will come in 79 as the mission president for the Taiwan Taipei mission. Crook would move down to Taichung in the central of the country to preside over the newly created Taiwan Taichung Mission, and then George Baker Jr. would come and replace Hales as president of the Kaohsiung Mission. I think that among the great significant events that took place during this time, of course, is the creation of a mission that was established in Taiwan, followed by the second and third mission. The adaptation to the missionary lessons that increased convert baptism, along with the establishment of the CES programs, the first area conference by a prophet of God, and also the first stakes and the publication of the scriptures. I'll conclude by sharing just with you 3 of the many stories of the impact of the 1970 missions and the CES programs in Taiwan. Wang Wei, who was baptized in 73, 20 years later will become the first temple president in Taiwan. Yan Chongting, who was baptized in 73 and among the first graduating class of institute students in 77, will serve as a stake president and then area authority 70. And then Ron Ray's son, who was baptized in 74, will go on a mission because of a seminary teacher and later become a stake president and currently serves as an area authority 70. There's many other stories, but time will not allow us to move forward with those. But there was a great impact to the church, both in Taiwan and elsewhere, as a result of the 1970s mission. Thank you.